Billy Tipton lived a full life as a devoted husband and father for 50 years. Yet the world only stood in stunned silence regarding his true self on the day the final curtain of his life fell. Meanwhile, Rock Hudson, the dream man of millions, was forced to accept a staged marriage to his own secretary, a $1 million contract designed solely to protect his flawless public veneer. Perhaps you could never have imagined the secrets surrounding the true identities of these 10 Golden Age stars. In 1950s Hollywood, the truth was often a forbidden luxury. It was buried beneath dapper tuxedos and meticulously calculated marriages. They gave us immortal performances on the silver screen, but their most silent and solitary role was their real life, a place where they had to set aside their true selves in exchange for the blinding limelight. Today, we reopen the archives to understand and honor the journeys of these 10 screen legends. Every story is a piece of cinematic history. Please subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming precious archives. And now our journey begins with Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson, the icon of masculinity and the fateful 3-year contract. In the peak years of the 1950s, the name Rock Hudson was more than just a movie star. He was the very definition of masculinity, the dream husband for millions of women worldwide. With his towering height, chiseled features, and a warm, resonant voice, studios molded Hudson into a flawless god. However, Hollywood history reveals that behind this brilliant aura lay a life lived within invisible boundaries governed by contracts calculated down to every breath. In 1955, with his career at its zenith, a shadow began to loom over Hudson's reputation. Tabloids of the era, most notably Confidential, began to prowl, threatening to expose the truth of his private life secrets deemed sinful in that conservative age. To protect their multi-million-dollar asset and the reputation of their golden goose, Universal Studios, executed a campaign that historians would later call the perfect orchestration. Within days, a whirlwind marriage between Rock Hudson and Phyllis Gates, his agent's secretary, was arranged. To the public, it was a storybook romance. But according to post-production documents and personal accounts from close friends released after his passing, this 3-year marriage was in reality a lavender marriage, a mere front. Hudson had to learn to fully embody the role of a model husband before the camera lens, tucking his personal desires deep into the darkness so as not to shatter the idolized image the public worshipped. On many afternoons, he was seen smiling happily with his wife at lavish parties, yet few knew the profound loneliness of a man not permitted to be himself, even within his own home. Rock Hudson's story is not just about identity. It is about the crushing pressure of the studio system, where human beings were treated as products to be meticulously packaged. The truth of his life only fully surfaced in 1985 when he became the first A-list star to go public with his AIDS diagnosis. This shockwave did more than just rattle Hollywood. It fundamentally changed how the world viewed gender nonconformity and compassion. Rock Hudson passed away, but he left behind a haunting legacy of the price of fame, spending an entire lifetime playing a role that never ended, just to keep the love of a world that wasn't yet ready to accept the man he truly was. While Rock Hudson's glamour was a role imposed by the system for our next figure living under a different identity, was the only way to coexist with art. We are speaking of a jazz legend who spent over 50 years perfectly embodying the persona of a man, leaving even those closest to him completely unaware of the staggering truth hidden behind the piano keys. Billy Tipton, the unfinished jazz score, and a 50-year hidden identity. In the glamorous and improvisational jazz world of the 1940s, Billy Tipton emerged as a brilliant pianist and saxophonist, a dapper gentleman with a captivating stage presence. For over half a century, Billy lived a complete life under a male identity. He had a flourishing career, a wife, and beloved adopted children. However, music history recorded an unthinkable shock in 1989 upon Billy's passing. Medical examiners and even his own family were stunned to realize that the suave jazz musician was in fact a woman. Tracing back to the 1930s when Dorothy Lucille Tipton began her career, jazz was a sanctuary, almost exclusively reserved for men. Women of that era were generally only accepted as vocalists. To pursue her passion and secure employment, Billie made the boldest decision of her life. She changed her identity. She bandaged her chest, donned oversized suits, and began living life as a man. What makes this story so profound is not just the concealment of gender, but the absolute sacrifice for art and personal freedom. Billie Tipton maintained this role perfectly for 50 years, bypassing medical exams and complex social circles. According to his adopted sons, Billie was a wonderful father, always loving and protective, using a fictional car accident injury to explain the constant bandages. Billie didn't choose this path to deceive, but to survive in a prejudiced society. Her story is a powerful testament to the yearning for a vocation to contribute without the barriers of gender. She took her secret to the grave, leaving posterity with a haunting question about the price of passion in an unforgiving world. Leaving the mysterious piano keys of Billie Tipton, we enter a more vulnerable shadow, where a young star struggled between the thin line of a classic role and the agonizing pain within his own soul. Anthony Perkins, the sentence behind the shadow of a psycho. There is a chilling coincidence between Anthony Perkins's real life and his career-defining role as Norman Bates in the classic film Psycho. If on-screen, Norman Bates was a fragmented soul obsessed with his late mother, in reality, Anthony Perkins lived a dramatic double life, not out of madness but out of a desperate struggle to be seen as normal. The resounding success of Psycho unintentionally became a psychological cage, imprisoning this talented artist in a persona he never truly belonged to. Most audiences saw only a boyish, shy Anthony Perkins with expressive eyes, a new icon for the youth. Yet behind that perfect veneer lay a shattered soul. According to biographical research, Perkins was pushed into the harshest psychological therapies of the 50s and 60s, an era when gender nonconformity was treated as a disease to be cured. He endured agonizing hours on the therapy couch, attempting to brainwash himself into the model man expected by major studios. They needed a teen idol to sell tickets, not a real human with multifaceted emotions. The most heartbreaking part is that while the public cheered his masterful portrayal in horror films, Perkins was living a true nightmare. He lived in constant fear that a single slip-up, a glance, or an incorrect gesture would turn his painstakingly built career into smoke. This inner turmoil was so great that colleagues recalled him appearing to lose himself on set. Between the camera flashes of the press and the darkness of therapy rooms, Perkins had to learn to act, even when the cameras were off. Despite the repression, his heart secretly sought solace. Private romances with contemporaries such as dancer Rudolf Nureyev are mentioned in later records as the somber notes in his life symphony. It wasn't until his final years finding empathy from his wife Barry Berenson that he truly felt the warmth of acceptance. His passing in 1992 was not just a loss for cinema, but a belated warning about the cruelty of Hollywood glamour. Anthony Perkins left a final contemplative message that he learned more about compassion and kindness in his final days facing death than in an entire lifetime spent running from the truth behind him. The silence and quiet pain of Anthony Perkins stands in stark contrast to our next figure, a woman who never chose to run or submit. She challenged all of Hollywood with an androgynous beauty and a cold German pride. Marlene Dietrich, the Blue Angel, who challenged every gender definition. In the 1930s, when the world was still defining women through flowing dresses and soft demureness, Marlene Dietrich appeared as a mesmerizing cultural shock. With her high, elegant cheekbones, nonchalant gaze, and particularly her masculine tuxedo, she blurred the lines between the sexes, turning androgyny into the ultimate symbol of allure. Dietrich was not just an actress. She was a style revolution, daringly declaring to the world, I dress for myself, not for the image, not for the public, not for the fashion, not for men. Her boldness didn't stop at her wardrobe. While male colleagues lived in fear, Dietrich chose to live a proud, open life. According to archives and passionate love letters released later, her life included both dashing leading men and the most talented female artists of the time. She never bothered to deny, nor did she feel the need to confirm. For Dietrich, love and identity were things that could not be framed by narrow definitions. Dietrich's true power lay in her ability to command silence from studio moguls. They realized her mystery and androgynous aura were the very magnets drawing audiences to theaters. Her photos in men's clothing, smoking cigars, or controversial on-screen kisses didn't diminish her appeal. On the contrary, they made her an immortal legend. She lived a life of unbelievable freedom in an era where such freedom was a luxury. Yet behind the cold, proud exterior, Dietrich was a woman of depth and humanity. She abandoned her glamour in Germany to stand with the Allies in World War II, using her influence to protect human values. Marlene Dietrich's life is a brilliant proof that when you have enough talent and confidence to be yourself, the world will adjust to your standards. She ended her journey as an icon of liberation, leaving a legacy of borderless beauty. If Marlene Dietrich used style to redefine gender, our next figure entered history in an even more earth-shattering way. A timid American soldier who decided to embark on an unthinkable journey to Denmark, only to return as the most sought-after woman in the world. Christine Jorgenson, from discharged soldier to the blonde bombshell who shocked the world. In 1952, a headline appeared on the front page of the New York Daily News and immediately became the centerpiece of every conversation from cafes to high-end lounges. XGI becomes blonde beauty. The protagonist of this unbelievable story was Christine Jorgenson. Before becoming a symbol of courage, the world knew her only as a slender, shy American soldier recently returned from World War II with a soul full of conflicts that the science of the time had no name for. The decision to make that fateful trip to Denmark for a series of life-changing surgeries was more than just a search for a new appearance. It was an escape from the imprisonment of her own body. In an age when the term transgender didn't yet exist in common parlance, Jorgenson's actions were the most powerful cultural shock ever recorded. She didn't choose to hide or live a reclusive life after her transition. Instead, Christine faced the media's scrutiny with extraordinary intelligence and grace. Instead of becoming a figure of ridicule in the tabloids, Christine Jorgenson transformed herself into a true lady. She appeared in public with shimmering blonde hair, exquisite fashion sense, and a confidence that even Hollywood's top stars admired. The way she handled pointed questions from reporters with calm and scientific knowledge forced society to re-examine the definitions of gender. Archives show she received thousands of letters from across the globe, not just criticism, but mostly gratitude from those living in the shadows, seeing for the first time a ray of hope to be themselves. Christine Jorgenson's impact on society went far beyond a personal story. She opened an era where medicine and humanity began to intersect to address the most private pains of the human condition. Despite facing obstacles in her artistic career later on, Christine remained proud. She once shared that she didn't change her gender, but rather found liberation for her soul. Her presence stands as a vivid testament that sometimes the truth of a person lies not in what they were born as, but in the courage to become who they truly desire to be. The openly brilliant journey of Christine Jorgenson serves as a perfect contrast to our next character, a gentleman dubbed the ultimate ideal for every man who chose to live a cautious, double life alongside a secret partner for 12 long years. Cary Grant, the perfect gentleman and the fear behind the facade. In the history of cinema, few have defined elegance and charisma as quintessentially as Cary Grant. He was the inspiration for the character James Bond, the man every woman wanted to love and every man aspired to be. Yet behind the perfectly tailored suits and the radiant smile before the lens, Cary Grant was a man living in a perpetual obsession with protecting a secret that could have decimated his entire monumental career. The greatest shock for those researching Grant's private life is the enigmatic relationship between him and fellow actor Randolph Scott. For 12 years, Hollywood's two most attractive bachelors lived together in a house at Malibu Beach, which the press of the time mockingly dubbed Bachelor Hall. Surviving archival photographs show them cooking together, exercising, and enjoying moments of daily life in profound happiness, an image in stark contrast to Grant's brief and tumultuous marriages to starlets in the years that followed. Under immense pressure from major studios who would never permit their #1 masculine icon to be tarnished by non-conforming rumors, Cary Grant had to accept participation in elaborately staged PR campaigns. The studios forced them to separate and arranged whirlwind marriages for Grant to quench public suspicion. According to later documentaries such as Becoming Cary Grant, he underwent rounds of psychological treatment using experimental methods of the time, seeking balance and relief from the agonizing rift between his public image and his true self. Cary Grant's caution was so profound that he almost built a fortress around his private life. His obsession with his origins and the fear of abandonment rooted in his mother being secretly sent to a mental institution when he was a child made him constantly strive to maintain a flawless appearance. Cary Grant took his secrets and the hidden depths of his relationship with Randolph Scott to the grave, leaving behind a legacy of glamour that was as brilliant as it was tragic. He proved that sometimes the most difficult role does not lie on the screen, but in having to maintain a perfect, even artificial veneer to hide a heart that always yearned to be understood. Cary Grant's guarded elegance leads us to a more painful extreme. It is the story of a man who also possessed a beauty as if carved from stone, but a horrific accident inadvertently stripped away the mask, exposing the profound scars within his soul and his isolation in the heart of Hollywood. Montgomery Clift, Scars on the Face and Pain in the Soul. If Rock Hudson was the icon of radiant masculinity, Montgomery Clift was the embodiment of sensitivity, melancholy, and a breathtakingly fragile beauty. He was a pioneer of method acting, where the artist brings their own painful, real-life experiences into the character. Yet behind those profound films, Clift's life was a long series of desperate efforts to hide a truth he believed would destroy him, a soul that could not be framed by the rigid gender standards of the 1950s. The most tragic turning point of his life occurred on a fateful night in 1956. A horrific car accident while leaving a party at the home of his close friend Elizabeth Taylor shattered Clift's porcelain-like face. Doctors strove to reconstruct his appearance, but from then on, the public only saw a Montgomery Clift with a strained face and eyes filled with more sorrow than ever before. This physical disfigurement seemed like a bitter metaphor for the fracturing of his soul. According to records from those close to him, the accident was the beginning of Clift's abuse of alcohol and painkillers, a way for him to flee from physical agony and the isolation of not being able to live truthfully. During those stormy years, Elizabeth Taylor was the only one who truly understood and shielded him. She not only saved him from the wreckage of the accident, but was also the person Clift trusted most to share his true identity. They had a relationship beyond all ordinary definitions, a connection between two lonely souls amidst a cinema capital full of deceit. Later post-production documents noted that Clift's decline in his final years came not only from the accident, but also from the pressure to maintain the image of a lovesick rogue on screen, while his heart yearned for a completely different kind of recognition. The death of Montgomery Clift at age 45 was called the longest suicide in Hollywood history by the media of the time. He passed away like a ghost within his own limelight, leaving behind a legacy of artistic authenticity but private deception. Clift's story is a poignant reminder of how gifted a person can be, yet still be broken by the pressure of a society not yet compassionate enough to accept scars, whether on the face or in the heart. The exposed pain of Montgomery Clift stands in total contrast to the powerful silence of the next figure. A woman who chose to walk away from everything at the height of her glory, only to trade it for the right to live a reclusive life and protect secrets that remain forever inviolable. Greta Garbo, The Mystery of the Century and Silent Resistance. In the history of Hollywood, no one could command silence as regally as Greta Garbo. Dubbed the Swedish Sphinx, she possessed a distant, ethereal beauty and eyes that seemed to perceive all the world's sorrows. Yet while the entire world was at her feet, Garbo executed a staggering maneuver. She announced her retirement at age 36 and lived in reclusion for the remaining 50 years of her life. The decision to leave the limelight was not because her time had passed, but was a defiant protest against having to continue playing the glamorous woman role forced upon her by society and the studios. Behind her famous line, "I want to be alone," Garbo actually yearned to be herself without being scrutinized for her true identity. Private letters released later, especially those to her young friend Mercedes de Acosta, revealed a passionate soul always stifled by the fear of judgment. Garbo refused to marry despite pressure from all sides and always maintained an intensely independent lifestyle. She preferred wearing loose, masculine tailored clothes and flat shoes, walking the streets of New York like an elegant phantom, evading every paparazzi lens. Garbo's reclusion was essentially a fortress to protect her personal freedom. She understood that in the Hollywood of that era, a woman with different affections would never be allowed to exist unless she submitted to a lavender marriage. Instead of compromising, Garbo chose to vanish. She protected her privacy with such extremity that it became a legend. Neighbors and those who happened to meet her spoke of a woman with a captivating androgynous aura, one who spent half a century being able to wear jeans, walk freely, and love the way she wanted rather than the way the audience expected. Greta Garbo took all her secrets to the grave in 1990 without a single explanation or a clarifying interview. Her silence was not a cowardly escape, but a costly testament to the right of self-determination. She proved that glamour and fame can be brilliant, but are never worth the cost of living authentically, even if the price is eternal isolation in the eyes of the world. The absolute stillness of Greta Garbo will soon be shattered by the burning fire and rebellion of the next figure. A young man representing the collapse of all traditional values who lived a short life full of experiments in identity and borderless love. James Dean, the rebel icon and the borderless self. Late one night in New York as the club lights began to dim, James Dean, the icon of rebellion and idol of millions, was seen immersed in emotional conversations with friends of all genders. The shock lay not in his fame, but in the way he bluntly faced questions about his private life with a quote that went down in history. "No, I am not a homosexual, but I'm also not going to go through life with one hand tied behind my back." It was a defiant declaration in the conservative 1950s, where gender ambiguity was seen as a threat to traditional family values. James Dean was not just an actor, he was the embodiment of the generational rift. According to later biographers, notably in the book James Dean, Tomorrow Never Comes, he was described as a soul hungry to experience every facet of life without needing to label them, while Warner Brothers strove to build him a charming, bad boy image by staging fake dates with actress Pier Angeli. In reality, Dean was drawn to soul-deep connections rather than gender norms. He lived a life like his character in Rebel Without a Cause, lonely, restless, and always seeking validation from a world that only wanted to lock him into a mold. The way the studio handled the rumors surrounding James Dean is a prime example of the harshness of Hollywood at that time. They feared that if his true nature and free lifestyle were exposed, the new masculine icon they painstakingly built would collapse. Photos of Dean alongside starlets were released in rapid succession, and romantic stories were fabricated to cover the shadows of the nights he wandered through the haunts of bohemian artists. However, James Dean seemed never to care about that veneer. He lived at a breakneck speed, loving and experimenting as if he knew his time was short. His sudden death in a Porsche 550 Spider at age 24 froze James Dean's image forever in the public mind as an immortal legend. His premature passing left a massive question. If James Dean had lived longer, would he have been brave enough to completely break Hollywood's barriers and go public with his multifaceted self? James Dean left behind not just classic films, but a legacy of authenticity, a reminder that behind the image of a rebel star was a heart that always yearned to be loved without needing any labels. The spontaneity and freedom of James Dean lead us to the final character on the list, a woman who not only held her own secrets, but was also the silent protector of an entire hidden community in the heart of Hollywood. An iron lady with true power behind the doors of the tea rooms. Barbara Stanwyck, the godmother and the fortress of the tea rooms. In 1944, Barbara Stanwyck stood at the top of the world as the highest-paid actress in America. In an environment where women were often seen as dolls for studio bosses, Stanwyck embodied iron-willed independence and resolve. Yet behind that Iron Lady image was a life shrouded in secret barriers. She not only protected herself, but was also considered the key holder for a network of actresses in the same situation, those who had to seek solace in private parties at lavish tea rooms where the press's camera flashes never reached. Stanwyck's wisdom lay in how she controlled the media. To silence rumors about an overly independent lifestyle, she entered a 12-year marriage with actor Robert Taylor. To the public, they were the golden couple of the screen, but post-production documents and accounts from those close to them described this as a perfect, strategic alliance. And they lived in mutual respect, appearing together at major events to maintain a standard image. But once behind closed doors, each had a private world that was inviolable. Stanwyck used her professional authority to intimidate the studios, ensuring that the hidden corners of her life and those of her close female friends remained forever in the shadows. The strength of Barbara Stanwyck was not just a personality trait, but a survival tool. She understood that in Hollywood, power was the best shield. Until her final days, she kept her secrets with a cold pride, without a single explanation or confession. She passed away, leaving the legacy of a woman who conquered the summit with absolute talent, while fully protecting her true self in an era where the truth was sometimes a dangerous luxury. Looking back at the journey of these 10 legends, we see that the brilliant glow of Hollywood's golden age was sometimes built upon silent sacrifices. They gave the world immortal roles, but the most difficult role was the one they had to play in real life just to be loved and accepted by the public. Each story is a testament to the yearning to live to love and to be oneself, a desire that transcends all barriers of the era. Thank you for joining me in revisiting these emotional archives. If you found these stories meaningful, please subscribe and leave your thoughts in the comments. We will meet again on journeys to discover other hidden corners of history. Goodbye, and see you again.